we have got the new KEF KC92s. And shout out to Audio Advice for sending these over for me to review. If you guys want to pick up these subwoofers, you can find links down below in this description over to Audio Advice. And it does help out the channel by using those links. And again, thank you, Audio Advice. All right, so here we have it. Check this out. This looks pretty much exactly like the older version. I mean, there's nothing to it. On the front, it's just glossy black. We've got the KEF logo right there, right in the front bottom. And you know, this is like I said, this is a very tiny subwoofer, not as small as the KC92, but this does measure 13.8 inches from top to bottom, 13 inches from side to side, and it is 14 inches from front all the way to back, which we're counting the amplifier backplate. Now, if I swing this around to the side, we have one 9-inch driver there on the left side, and then swinging it around to the other side, we have another 9-inch driver there in a force canceling configuration. So they'll both fire at the same time and cancel any unwanted resonances inside the enclosure. And of course, you can see that this is a gloss black finish, super glossy black. All right, so let's take a look around back. Here we have the wireless adapter. So there is a wireless adapter available for this. It would plug in there. We have a USB-C input that is for firmware updates. We have a little system check button there. We've got a 12-volt trigger. We've got your crossover control from bypass all the way up to 120 hertz. We have your volume control. We've got the phase between 0 or 180 degrees. We've got a few different EQ presets. We've got room, wall, corner, cabinet, and apartment. So we'll mess with those a little bit later and find out what they do. And then we've got a couple options for power. We've got always on, auto on, or the 12-volt trigger. Then if you have any kind of hum or anything like that, there is a little ground lift here as well. You can turn that on or off. And then we've got a speaker line level output using a Phoenix connector. We've got your RCA LFE ins. This one white one here is dedicated for LFE only. We've got your high pass filter dip switches here. And then we've got your RCA unbalanced line out. Power switch on off, and then the power inlet. Unfortunately, I was a little surprised to see there are no XLR ins or outs on the back of this, so that's a little weird, especially at this price point, but maybe in a future iteration we'll get that. And then here we have the backplate here. We've got the amplifier backplate. This is rated at 1000 watts RMS or 2x500 watts each for each one of the subwoofer drivers. Now, as far as frequency response, this is rated to go down to 11 hertz at 110 dB. So for such a little subwoofer, that's pretty impressive. As far as setup, the subs will be placed in my dedicated theater with one in the front side of the room and the other in the opposite left rear corner. They'll be paired up with 18 RBH speakers all connected to a Trinnov altitude processor. I'll be using a Kaleidoscape for demos. To get the subs dialed into my setup, I'm only using the built-in features that come built into the subwoofers, so I'm not going to be using the Trinnov room correction to do the work for me. This way, I'm only relying on what the subs offer on their own merits. I have, however, adjusted the delays in the processor. There's very few subs that I've used that really left a memorable impression in my mind. One of them being the 80-inch Ascendo subwoofer for obvious reasons, this RBH21 that I have now, and on the total opposite end of the spectrum is the KEF KF92, which is the previous version of the KC92. Because those subs were the smallest subs I've ever used, I didn't think that they would have enough output to be considered home theater worthy. And at that time, I was using a pair of Arendal 2V ported subwoofers, which is their absolute best subs, as far as I know, and also about 4 times the size of the KEFs. Now you'd think that from the sheer size of the Arendals, they would have smoked the KEFs, but I found that to be the total opposite. Aside from the Arendals being able to play a lot louder with higher SPL, the KEFs were tighter, played cleaner, and for some baby-sized boxes, dug down lower than the Arendals. So bigger doesn't always mean better. So I've got high hopes for these new KC92s. So let's go ahead, let's kick it off with Midway in 4K on the Kaleidoscape. funny thing is, when I first shot this video, I was shocked how good these still sounded in the new space. When I had the original KF92s, my room was half the size of this one, so I didn't think I was going to get the same impact. But I only had one subwoofer turned on in the back of the room, so the fact that I was getting that much output filling this space was kind of crazy. But having them both playing at the same time was incredible. I'm still blown away that these little boxes can move this much air to where they actually fooled me into thinking I might have had all 9 of my RBH subwoofers turned on. Now that part where the little girl is outside, where the bass is just droning on, remains so clean I can feel it vibrate the room. The explosions have that tight, quick snappiness that my bigger subs have, and they dig low enough to shake my seats. The next demo we're going to pop on is Interstellar. It's got a DTS mix with Nolan's and Zimmer's over-the-top bass.
Beyond our 3 dimensions. All you can do is record and observe.
There's so much sustained output during the wormhole scene, it can get sloppy with less capable subs. These 92s kept their composure and never once felt like they were gonna bottom out, which I would attribute to their built-in DSP to protect it from user destruction. The subs also blended in perfectly with my speakers, elevating the emotional beats in the music, never drawing unwanted attention away from the screen or becoming localizable in my home theater. They had no issues reproducing those deep organ notes, which just resonated through my space, and they definitely captured the epic scale of Hans Zimmer's score.
No!
And finally, let's throw on Edge of Tomorrow in DTS.
I'm not sure if we're even on the air.
In order to do this demo justice, you'll really need a lot bigger subs. That's why I've got the RBH21. Now don't get me wrong, a pair of these go way deeper than I think you can imagine, but they can't play the infrasonic notes at loud enough SPLs to really make it meaningful. In fact, the last half of this demo, it seems like the limiter is keeping it from dipping too low and stopping the driver from overexcursion, so it is a good thing that this is a hard sub to blow up. Now, what I had said about the older KF92 still holds true with the KC92, in that yes, this sub sounds like a much bigger subwoofer, it digs lower than some bigger subwoofers, and it can be just as nimble and tactile as any high-end subwoofer out there. But at a certain point, the protection kicks in, which limits the output at really high SPL, so where bigger subs like the ones that I have do have much more headroom for those louder dynamic peaks. But given the size, I don't think it's going to be a surprise that you won't reach full theatrical levels. Now for me personally, I don't listen at high volumes too often, so just having 2 of these, I can honestly say, left me very satisfied for everything that I watched. Now, if I had backed down the volume for the Edge of Tomorrow demo to where I wasn't trying to go full tilt, you can get a little taste of what's down there, but when the volume goes up, it totally disappears. Now, I did take a few measurements on my main listening seat, so you can get an idea of what I heard. The first one is with the subwoofer in the back of the room. I do have a peak at 47 Hz with some really good extension down to 10 Hz, which is what this subwoofer is spec'd at. The next one is with the subwoofer in the front of the room, which looks very similar to the one in the back of the room, but with more output above 100 Hz. And here is both subs combined. I get a little more SPL overall with that 47 Hz peak still there, with excellent extension, and this is as loud as they would go in my space. Now, it'll be real easy to flatten this response in the processor, but seeing as the subwoofers don't have an adjustable EQ built in, I wasn't able to do it with the onboard settings. And I did take all three of these measurements with the room setting selected on the back of the subwoofer. Now, this next measurement is with the wall option, which looks basically the same as the room setting with a tiny bit less output down low. This one is the corner setting, so again, it's attenuated just a tiny bit, and it's even more attenuated with the cabinet setting. And the biggest difference is going to come with the apartment setting, which cuts off the bottom end at around 20 Hz, so this way you won't disturb your neighbors in your apartment. Now keep in mind that this is the response I got in my space, and it's sure to be very different in yours. At the time of this video, the KC92 is selling for $2,000. If I was going to give away an award today for the best performing small form factor subwoofer, the KC92 would be the winner. And like I said earlier, I did not expect this to perform as good as it does in a much bigger space than what I had before, but it absolutely blew away my expectations. If KEF were to make a bigger version of this subwoofer with maybe dual 18s to really maximize SPL, it might be game over for everyone else. Now, if you don't need maximum pressure levels, or maybe you have a smaller space and want to get the most bass possible without having to have a giant box in your room, get the KC92. It can even pull double duty for a music-only system because this is a super tight articulate subwoofer, plus has enough chops for movies. I cannot think of a better small subwoofer to recommend than the KC92. Now, if you want to grab anything that I've mentioned in this video, you can find a link down below in this video's description. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you again in the next video.